This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it is time for the Intentionality Gurus with Candace Pollock. And Candace, before we get started, I have to let you know that I heard from a listener, and the listener's name is anonymous, which I think is hysterical because the message they gave was that they've known you for a long time and they really appreciate the podcast, but there's no name. It's anonymous.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I know it's not my mom. My mom passed away a few years ago, but maybe it was my sister or something.
Possibly. I just thought it was funny that I got that. And
It's
like,
sweet. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. So whoever you are, we're glad that you appreciate the podcast. And what are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about the half-life of motivation. So what do you think that means? I know I always put the burden on you, like you're my guinea pig. So
the half-life of motivation. So would that be like, you really want to do something, but you sort of like pull back because
exactly.
Okay. Yeah. Had a lot of those days recently.
Yeah, well, just in life. And so, the intentionality gurus isn't that I'm a guru or you're a guru or anything like that. It's about figuring out what are those hidden things, the hidden iceberg of things that drive how we think and behave and act, and what our feelings are. So in this context, the whole idea is that we put a lot of stock in willpower and motivation and setting goals, and in many scenarios I've been in, particularly, in professional settings, of setting big, hairy, audacious goals, BHAGs. And, all the science shows that doesn't work. It's sexier than just setting goals and going about kind of routine stuff.
Right.
So where has that shown up for you in recent memory, if any? If you don't putting you on the spot.
Yeah, it's funny because I said to my husband during the week, if it's nice on the weekend, meaning not cold and too rainy, we need to get out in the garage and reassemble things because I have somebody coming that's going to be building me some new shelves. And he said, okay. He said, it's really going to be an all-day situation. And I said, oh, no problem. No, I've got plenty of energy. And we got out there, and after an hour, I said, we have to stop for the day. And he looked at me and he goes, but you wanted to get this all done. And I said, yeah, my eyes were bigger than what I can actually do. And so I realized that there once was a time that I could set something like that in motion and I would just like do it. But yesterday I realized that just doing it, I wasn't accomplishing the right things. And so I was doing it slower and I was getting exhausted.
Yeah, so that's we refer to that in some circles as right sizing the tasks to the time and the energy and, a whole bunch of factors. We are humans and we can run out of steam.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of factors. So, so what do you think motivation is?
It's almost like a passion of wanting to do something.
Okay. Anything else?
And
there's no wrong answers.
Yeah. I mean, for me, motivation is something that I feel like I've got to do it, and not necessarily for myself, but for others.
Yeah. So in the example you gave, it was something that had to be done in order to get the real goal, which was the shelves in the garage. It sounds like.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. But the cleaning part was like the necessary evil.
Right.
Okay. All right. So that kind of points to the gist of what we're talking about here. Not just that, but motivation and so on. What do you think willpower is?
Being able to put it all into motion and completing it.
Perseverance and stuff like that, overcoming, obstacles or not
Yep.
feeling like doing it at the time.
Yep.
All those wonderful things we come up with in the middle of the night that we have to do, and then we might even write them down, and then they don't get done.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I had a whole list that I started with this morning, and I think I've done 2 on the list so far.
Slacker, right?
Yeah.
That's how we
Yeah.
beat ourselves up, right?
Yep.
I only did like 300 things today, not 302 things.
Yeah.
It's like crazy stuff. And what about self-discipline?
So self-discipline is really, to me, it used to be just making myself do it no matter how hard it was, no matter how I felt. My self-discipline is different now. It's doing it, but doing it in the best possible way. Not just doing something just to do it, but do it and do it right. So it might take me longer, such as my cleaning of the garage.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And I'm a person who has known herself to be a good initiator and not so great at follow through, because when I get bored or get distracted or any of the normal excuses and so on, or I overestimate how much I can complete in a period of time.
Right.
Mm. So the idea here, the common denominator among those things, it's part of it is internal state and part of it is external manifestation of that state. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
All right. So, and our internal state can fluctuate based on what's happening externally, where we've talked before about um, what people say and, the thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and actions that result from some event. We blame it on the event, but it's really our thoughts about the event that, propels some of the internal dynamics that are going on, not only the body chemistry, but also, the thoughts are generating certain actions in response to the story we're making up about it. So in this context, the half-life of motivation, what science has shown is that it ebbs and flows in part, or it's impacted by pressure and performance. So pressure might be a deadline. It might be, the time that you set to do it, with your husband.
Right.
And I'm not saying he didn't do anything this weekend or anything, but when the other person's actions may not be the right actions or to the same degree, or
Right.
all of that stuff that we factor in. And what the science is showing is that the half-life, they call it the U curve of motivation, and it goes back to these guys, Yerkes and what is it, Dobson. It's their formula, basically, or premise in any situation, not just with motivation, that we're going to wane in the middle of it's between where we start and where our goal is, particularly the longer range the goal is. So, have you experienced something like that?
Well, it's interesting because when we started this project yesterday, um, I had envisioned how certain things were going to happen. Um, he envisioned them totally different. So, for instance, if any of you are looking for junk, I have plenty of it in my garage. Um, but we have all these giveaway things that we used when we were um, repping Intel and HP. So I have boxes and boxes of giveaway stuff. And it's no longer in use for those companies. So we can't send it back. We could throw it in the trash or give it to somebody else who may want to be a collector.
Mhm.
I was recommending this all just needs to go in the trash. That would take care of about half of the garage. And I'm not kidding. That's how much stuff we have. And he was going through them and going, oh, these might be worth something someday, and repacking them. And that's when I started to lose my energy in doing anything, because I had to stand around and wait for him. And we really weren't getting rid of enough things in my, perception. And
Mhm.
so I sort of like, after an hour, gave up. I was exhausted from not accomplishing what I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, I love that as an example. So here, some of the written stuff about willpower and motivation. Willpower is the ability to resist temptation or overcome obstacles to achieve a goal. And it's basically kind of that internal strength that can be developed with practice and discipline. I don't agree with that last sentence based on all the reading I've done on it. Motivation is an internal or external force that drives us towards a goal. So that could be the pressure, deadline driven and so on. Your weekends are precious. You have a busy week and so on, and your time together may be not as often, with
Right.
that kind of energy to do things, blah, blah, blah. And so there's some sense that I've got to get it done or can get it done, and that would be fun to do. And then, the outcome is not being produced because of the repacking,
Right.
like kind of admiring the concept of getting rid of stuff, but admiring keeping the stuff even more.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So, with that in mind, also the idea, so that's the performance and the pressure thing. But the idea is that we start out with good intentions. So we know at the beginning, we know what our goal is at the start line. Okay. And we have a sense of where the finish line is. But as we start to move towards the finish line, however far or not far in the future that is, we start to lose sight of where we started from, but the desired outcome is not close enough for that to like incentivize us to keep moving forward. That's the U curve.
Yeah.
So we come down, our motivation wanes. So willpower might help us get over that hump, but it's not something, the more we use it, the less powerful it becomes in a day, for instance. Because there was another definition that basically says it gives us the boost of energy towards, accomplishing something, but it's not something we can rely on. And so Dan Sullivan and Ben Hart, I think it's Hardy, wrote The Gap and the Gain. So what's his name? Dan Sullivan's been talking about the gap for ages, where we start out and then we have that goal in the future. And then at some point we start to get demoralized because we're looking at how far we are from that future, when we really need to look back and see how far we've come. So where might that show up on Saturday, if at all? I'm not saying it did, but
Yeah. Well, so the interesting part is we were throwing a lot of things out. So my garbage bin is full. But in my perception is we really didn't do anything, because looking at all the other stuff that's still around. And his perception was, well, we condensed these boxes and we threw all this other stuff away. And so we did make a dent. And so I'm understanding the difference of how I try to get things done and he gets things done. And, after 40 years, I mean, I should be used to it. But one of the things I did today, because I knew I could, and it wouldn't disrupt his equilibrium, there were still a few things down there that I could go through and get rid of. And that really made me feel good, because I could see a space on our workbench that now was empty. And, and those are the things that I look for, to say, hey, I've accomplished something, where in his mind, he looks at that garbage can and sees it overflowing and says, look at all the stuff we threw away.
Yeah, and there's no right or wrong to it necessarily. I mean, I shouldn't even have uttered the word necessarily. There's no right or wrong to it. But in the context of what goal did you share that goal? Did you have a clear idea of what that goal was? You know, even just with ourselves,
Yeah,
often we say, well, I want to lose that last 10 pounds, but we're not clear about other elements that are required in that. And so we don't, that's the U curve of motivation is part of it, in addition to some other things. So one of the questions is, did you each have the same outcome clearly pictured in your brains? Maybe, maybe not.
no, and we absolutely did not, because I looked at one part of the garage where I wanted to start, and he looked at a different part. And I followed because it was like, okay, he's gonna do this. Because I knew if we both went our separate ways, nothing would get accomplished.
Mhm.
And so again, while I was in this mode of working and trying to accomplish something, in the back of my mind, it was like, this isn't as important as what I thought was important on the other side of the garage.
Mhm.
Now
And
today,
which side are the shelves going into?
what was that?
Which side of the garage are the shelves going?
This side where I wanted to work. But I understand what he was doing, and he finally explained it to me this morning at breakfast. He said that if we could get the workbench cleaned off is where we were working, then we would have a place to put the stuff that's already on the shelves to go through it over there.
Okay.
Right. Okay. That wasn't my thinking. It was like, my thinking was take it off the shelf, put it on the floor and go through it.
Mhm, mhm,
So either way could have worked,
mhm,
but um, you know, I wanted it to be my way and he wanted it to be his way.
mhm, mhm. And I love the fact that y'all had a conversation about it because maybe that'll inform the next session. I presume there will be another one.
Oh, yes, there will be.
Yeah, exactly. And if not in the garage, probably someplace else, because I think we all have to be looking at that stuff, particularly as we're getting older and older and older, and it seems to be accelerating.
Right.
Um, who's going to take this stuff? In the old days, it was the kids, but now kids don't want any of it.
And that's one of the conversations that we've had, because with both of my sons living out of town,
Mhm,
there's, I cannot picture either one of them coming home with a moving van of some sort
mhm,
and collecting all their stuff. And I still have stuff from my oldest son who
mhm.
moved away 30 plus years ago. You know, it's like when he moved in with his dad, he left all of his stuff here. And we moved it from house to house, thinking, well, he may want it someday.
That is so, so common, Karen. I mean, I just, in the nature of my day job, that's definitely something that many, many, many families are dealing with. So in the process, and we've kind of touched on some of this before with James Clear's stuff. He wrote Atomic Habits, but unrelated to that, indirectly unrelated, if that makes any sense. It's not quite on point regarding his book about habit forming. The part that's he says basically is, look for ways you go about the goal, not the goal itself, because the going about the goal, and again, we talked about it when I was kind of inspired by something that he had posted, um, that we anchor to the embodiment of the qualities we would need to get it done rather than the outcome, because the outcome theoretically will be a natural byproduct of being the person who does X. So, for instance, I would be a person who meets her commitments to herself if I did such and such when I scheduled to do it. Right now,
Okay.
that's only one little piece of it. And so to make the steps small enough, so in terms of what we're scheduling, so that to not do it would not be reasonable. So what shows up when I say that phrase, if it makes any sense?
So yeah, I could just sit here and let all that stuff keep collecting out there and obviously wouldn't get done, but it's also not going to meet my needs. So even if I do it in small increments, and not think about the overall what it's going to look like, I'm at least meeting my needs and accomplishing.
Yeah, and of course the other premise is because my husband was a keeper. He wasn't a hoarder, he was a keeper. And so, I'm acutely familiar with things accumulating in various places. And as long as new stuff isn't coming in at the same pace that old stuff is going out. You get it?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
See, we bring in the new stuff with the thought, oh, I'm going to get rid of the old stuff.
Exactly, but we don't always get rid of the old stuff.
But see, I'm the opposite of my husband. If I go out and I buy, let's say, a new bathroom rug, then I get rid of the old bathroom rug. I'm replacing it for a reason.
Yeah, right.
So,
Right. Not
but
just two.
yeah, but his comment is, but we may need that, or maybe one of our boys will need it. And it's like, they're not going to take our old bathroom rug or whatever it is.
Would you take somebody else's old bathroom rug? I don't think
No,
so. Yeah.
probably not. I mean, and it's like, I'll give another example. He loves cameras and camera equipment, and he's constantly, I'm gonna go buy that lens. And he buys the lens, but the comment is that other lens I have, I don't need anymore, so I'm gonna sell it. But no, he doesn't.
Yeah.
Like, so he did that this weekend. He went to a camera show and he came home with the new lens. And I said, oh, did you take the other lens to sell? And he goes, no. He said, but maybe I will in the future. And so instead, in our bedroom on the bookcase, we have lenses sitting there. And I don't think he's used any of them probably in the last 5 years.
But he might.
He might.
And would he know where to find them? I mean, because that's always my issue. It's like, could you find it if you wanted to? Because I can never seem to find those things that I set aside for that time that I might use it.
No, typically we don't find it when he wants it. And then, later on, next day or next week or something, all of a sudden, we'll find it, but that's not when he wants it. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
But I get rid of my stuff. I mean, I clean out my closets and just get rid of clothes. And he still has a pair of bell bottoms hanging in the closet. Giving away all of his secrets.
You should make him put them on and take a picture.
Yeah, they can fit.
They're coming back, actually, from what I understand. So the idea is, I've always called it systems to support the habit or guardrails. What can I set up as parameters so that I may fall off the steps, but the guardrails are going to, at least keep me on the road or somewhere in the proximity of the road. I'm not going to go off the cliff or off, the whatever, in order to, not get on the path again. So basically, James Clear was saying, commit to the process, not the goal. And if we can make it enjoyable, something about it that we enjoy. So there are some things that I do. Way back in the day, I was doing Intentionality sessions where it's a combination of affirmations and music, motivating music and so on, exercise. And one time I had to leave my car at the shop and they didn't have a loaner. And so I took the bus home and I was listening. There was a new release of the routine and I was listening to it on the bus, and it was the kind of music, maybe it's just me, it was the kind of music that you couldn't hold still. You had to kind of like be bopping in your seat or something. And then I walked like a block to my house, and I got into the house and I didn't want it to end. It was just such a euphoric feeling that I did some cleaning and I did some, picking up and things that I hadn't gotten to for several days. So the point is, you can do silly little things like that to make it fun. And so, and that's more likely to maintain the steps towards the goal. So it's the process, making it fun, making it, some people reward themselves and so on. I find that a little too attenuated for me. It's not enough of a cause and effect, but it works really well for other people. So, and then, calling to mind the idea that each time you do it, you're reinforcing the mental habit, the hardwiring, the neuroplastic pathways on I take action when I set a goal. So which one of those and or others might be your system to support the habits towards a goal that, focusing on the steps, not the destination?
Well, lately I have been focusing on the steps. So in addition to the garage, I think I brought this up a couple weeks ago that I decided that wanted to turn my son's bedroom into
Yeah.
and when the first day I walked in there, it was overwhelming because we had been storing things in there. And especially in the wintertime, rather than taking it down to the garage, we were putting it in there. And so the first day that I walked in there that was going to do this, it was like, oh my God, it's never going to get done. And my imagination was I was going to get it done in one day. But instead, I looked over into one section and I knew that this is what I wanted to take care of first. And so I just focused on that, nothing else in the room. And once that was completed, I left the room. And the next time that I went back in there, I focused on another section. And the room now is about 95% complete. But that's different from how I've done projects in the past. I've always looked at the end goal. I've just got to get this done. And so I realized yesterday when my husband and I were out in the garage that if I could look at the garage in the same way as I looked at the room, it would be much easier for me. And that's what I went out there into this afternoon. I focused on one area of that workbench of things that I knew that I could take care of and that I would feel satisfied that, hey, I made another dent.
Perfect. So for me, what's standing out for me and what you said is that's the perfect example of how you made it smaller increments so that you could always keep in mind where you started and what that mini benchmark or milestone goal is, so that there wasn't enough room for a dip in motivation.
Right.
You follow? Whereas if it had remained, get the garage clean so we can get the shelves in or get the shelves in, it might have been a bigger motivation ordeal for you, a bigger mountain of to overcome in terms of potential drag on your motivation.
Right. Exactly.
So what would listeners, what would you recommend as a takeaway for people that might be listening?
So I think the biggest thing is that, we all have these dreams of how things are going to happen. And if we can take that step back and maybe enjoy the process along the way, rather than make ourselves, like I used to make myself crazy in trying to just do everything and get it done, and then not even appreciate, what I even have at the end of that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a double whammy that you didn't get the full goal and you're beating yourself up for that.
Right. I mean, as I look at the room that I'm redoing up here, I mean, it's exciting to me because it's like, oh, I got this done. Okay. And as I get each little section done, I realize that maybe I want to do something a little bit different in another section. And one of it is that I'm, want to change the bedding color in that room, which my husband sort of laughs at me because he says, for who? And I said, for me. you know, and
Ooh,
like,
love it, love
and,
it, love it.
and,
Yeah.
you know, I understand what he's saying. The room isn't gonna get used that much. Yes, you're gonna use it. Why is that important? But I explained to him why it was, because it's my area. And I said, and once I have my area, it's going to reflect me, not, my son, even though when he comes to visit, he's gonna sleep in that room, but it's gonna reflect me. And
Nice.
it's about time.
Sounds great.
So to all of our listeners, it's okay not to do everything at once. Take things in small bites, appreciate it, and maybe that would be the new way of doing spring house cleaning for those of you who do spring house cleaning.
And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, that might be something else for other support going forward.
Absolutely. I love that. All right. Well, you have a great day and we will talk soon.
Thank you, Karen.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.